Okay, so in the last video, we talked about order of magnitude and we introduced the concept of the SI unit system. And we ended up off by talking about the concept of SI prefixes. Now, remember that SI prefixes are basically, what you see here in this chart right here. And basically, these are prefixes that are used to very easily indicate very big or very small numbers. Now, the way this chart works is like this. Okay, so let's take a look at centi. Okay, the number next to centi says 10 to the negative 2. In other words, if I have, let's say centimeters, the C in centi is a replacement for 10 to the negative 2. In other words, 1 centimeter is equal to, if I replace that C with 10 to the negative 2, I can say that 1 centimeter is equal to 10 to the negative 2 meters. Or, for example, let's say kilo. Okay, kilo has a factor of 10 to the power 3. In other words, kilo, that lowercase k, is a straight replacement for 10 to the power 3. So if I say to, I don't know, kilo seconds, okay, that would be 2, and then I would replace the k with 10 to the power 3 seconds. Now 10 to the power 3 is 1,000, so that's the same thing as 2,000 seconds. And so very, very big numbers, very small numbers can be quickly written or spoken using these SI prefixes. Okay, that's the purpose. Now, if we didn't have SI prefixes, we could still get by in science, but really it's just a convenience factor. Okay, so keep in mind that is how you use this chart. Okay, remember that when you're using the symbol, it's basically a straight replacement for that scientific notation factor. Okay, just like we saw here. Now, pause it there if you need to. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. What I want to do now is I want to introduce the concept of unit conversions. And we're going to spend the next day or two solving problems with unit conversions. But we're going to start by doing unit conversions in the context of dealing with SI prefixes. Okay, now, you've probably done this before. There's more than one way to do a unit conversion. However, I would highly recommend that you go with the method that I'm going to show you, just to limit the chances of you making any mistakes. Okay, now here are my rules for unit conversion. Okay, so step 1, you always start by writing down the quantity which you are trying to convert. Step 2, and this is one of the most important steps, always make sure that all of the units cancel except for the units you're trying to convert into. Okay, now just to be clear, I'm not telling you that all the units have to cancel. I'm telling you that all the units have to cancel except for the units you're trying to convert into. Okay, so if you look down here, I have meters on top and meters on bottom. The only thing left over is what I want to end up with, which is centimeters in this case. Okay, so all the units should cancel out except what you want to be left with at the end. And step 3, always make sure conversion factors are on top of each other. Okay, now, when I say conversion factors, I mean two things that are equal to each other. Okay, so, for example, a conversion factor might be like, 1 yard is equal to 3 feet, or 1 centimeter is equal to 0.01 meters, okay, which is a conversion factor in the example at the bottom here. Okay, you can see because they're on top of each other, those two things have to be equal. Okay, as long as you follow these steps, you can't go wrong on unit conversions. I will say that the biggest issue people run into when they're doing unit conversions is, number 1, not all their units cancel out, and number 2, their conversion factors are not correct. Okay, now a lot of people get hung up on oh, how do I know which one goes on the top, or how do I know which one goes on the bottom? All you have to do is follow these 3 steps, and it'll take care of itself. Okay, so it's the same steps for all the unit conversions we're going to do, but we're going to start with doing basic SI prefix conversions. Okay, so pause there to add that to your notes, and let's do some examples. Okay, example 1. It says convert 1,250 centimeters into meters. Okay, So step one, you always start off by writing your given. Now in this case, the number I'm given to convert is 1250 centimeters. And then I make my little T-chart here. Okay, now step two says all of the units have to cancel out except what we want to end up with. Now what that means is, if I'm starting with centimeters, I have to get centimeters to somehow cancel out. Okay, now the reason that's important is because that tells me if I have centimeters on the top, the thing that has to go on the bottom is centimeters. Okay, I must have centimeters on the bottom to cancel out the centimeters on the top, and then I'm going to have meters by itself on the top. So again, if you're always, having issues with unit conversions and you're asking yourself, how do I know which one goes where? It's very simple. All you have to do is arrange it in a way that all the units cancel out except what you want to end up with. Okay, now step three goes back to knowing the conversion factor. Now, you should know what centi is, and if you don't, well, I would highly recommend you spend some time familiarizing yourself with the prefix chart. But if you don't, you can look at this chart over here, look and see that centi is 10 to the power negative 2. And what that means, remember, is that 1 centimeter is 10 to the negative 2 meters. Okay, that's how that chart works. Remember, centi is a straight replacement for 10 to the negative 2. Now, double check. Your units should cancel out. Centimeters cancels. I'm left with meters. I've got my conversion factor correct here. Okay, and now all I have to do is multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom, and divide. Okay, so that's going to be 1250 times 10 to the negative 2 divided by 1 on the bottom, and that's going to be 12.50 meters. Okay, and we have done our very first unit conversion in IB Physics. Congratulations. Okay, so we're going to go on to example 2. Pause it there if you need to finish writing that down. Okay, let's take a look at example 2. Okay, so see if you can do this one on your own. Pause it here and see if you can convert 820 seconds into milliseconds. Okay, so like any conversion problem, we always start with our given, 820 seconds. I write that down, 820 seconds. I make my little chart, and I know that because step 2 tells me all the units have to cancel out except what I want to end up with, if I have seconds on the top, I have to have seconds on the bottom to cancel. Now, I'm going from seconds to milliseconds, and so I'm not going to pull it up again, but you should have it either in your notes or pull up on your device. Milli is 10 to the minus 3. In other words, 1 millisecond is 10 to the minus 3 seconds. Make sure the units cancel out, seconds and seconds. I multiply across the bottom, across the top, 820 times 1, and across the bottom, and divide, just like this. Okay, so the answer that you should have gotten is 820 divided by 10 to the negative 3, and that should be 820,000 milliseconds. Okay, so that is the answer to example 2. Okay, so again, the steps for doing unit conversions are very simple. We haven't done anything complicated yet. Just make sure you follow those steps. Okay, step 1, start with your given. Step 2, make sure you arrange it so all the units cancel except what you want to end up with. And then step 3, make sure that the numbers on top of each other are actually a conversion factor. So what I mean is 1 millisecond is 10 to the minus 3 seconds. If you put it the other way around, it wouldn't be correct. Okay, it is not true that 1 second is 10 to the minus 3 milliseconds. Okay, that is not equal. Okay, so make sure the numbers stacked on top of each other are actually correct conversion factors. Okay, pause it there if you need to take a look at that. Okay, so we are going to move on to more general unit conversions. Okay, now if you could please add these unit conversions to your notes. Pause it here if you need to. These are just some very basic ones that I expect you to know off the top of your head. The only one that's missing here is right here, 1 km. K is kilo, so 1 kilometer is 10 to the power 3 meters, which is 1,000 meters. Okay, so kilo is 1,000. Okay, so 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. 1 inch is exactly 2.54 centimeters. That's just a conversion that you should know. 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. Okay, an hour is 60 minutes, and each minute is 60 seconds. So 60 times 60 is 3,600. And 1 year is 365.25 days. Okay, now you might ask about why the 0.25. It's 0.25, and so that means every 4 years we end up with an extra day, and we call that a leap year. Okay, the year in which we have that extra day, we call that a leap year. So there you go. Okay, just some basic unit conversion factors you should know. So now we're going to look at more general unit conversion problems. Okay, so let's get to it. Okay, make sure you add these conversion factors in your notes. Now I will say, before we do some examples, these are not the only conversion factors you'll need. I expect you to know what I consider basic unit conversion factors. What I mean is, I expect that you know there's 7 days in a week, or there's 3 feet in a yard, stuff like that. I just expect you to know. If you don't know that there's 60 minutes in an hour, then I don't know. That's another problem. Okay, so I might give you the more uncommon ones, like 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters, but you are going to have to know some basic other unit conversions that you should have picked up just from your general education. So let's take a look at example 1. Okay, convert 15 inches into yards. Okay, you start with your given. I have 15 inches. And now as I'm thinking about inches to yards, I think to myself, well, I don't know the conversion factor from inches to yards, but I do know inches to feet, and I know that there's 3 feet in 1 yard. And so this is going to be our first 2-step unit conversion problem. Now, I'm following my steps, and step 2 says all the units have to cancel out except what I want to end up with. So if I have inches on the top, I also have to have inches on the bottom. Okay, now, as I'm writing this, see if you can tell what happens here. Okay, can you take a look at this and figure out where I went wrong? Okay, so hopefully you recognize that even though my units do cancel out correctly, okay, that part is correct, my conversion factor right here is wrong. It is not true that there's 12 feet in 1 inch. Okay, it is true that there's 12 inches in 1 foot. Okay, so there's only 2 real ways you can mess up a unit conversion problem. Either the units don't cancel out, which should be really easy to spot, or if your conversion factors are wrong. Okay, so I have made that fix, and now I'm going to finish my conversion. I multiply across the top and the bottom and divide. So 15 times 1 times 1 divide by 12 times 3. Okay, and so you should get, let's see, what would that be? 15 over 36. I'm going to round that to 2 decimal places and get 0.42 yards. Okay, so that is example 1. Alright, now we're going to do one more example. I want you to try to do example 2 on your own. Pause it here if you need to finish writing down example 1, and then I'm going to erase this. Okay, here is example 2. Okay, example 2 says, convert 1 foot into meters. Hint, look at conversion factor from your notes. Now, first of all, let me tell you what not to do, or what not to use. Okay, every year, there's always somebody that says 1 meter is equal to 3 feet. That is wrong. Okay, do not do that. That is not a correct conversion factor. It's not a true statement. Every single year, there's at least 1 or 2 people who write that on a test or something, and I feel like they were not paying attention when I said not to do that. Okay, this is not a conversion factor. Okay, in fact, I don't know off the top of my head the conversion factor from feet to meters. I suppose I can look it up, but I want you in this problem to use the conversion factors I've already given you. So, see if you can figure this out on your own. Okay, using the conversion factors you already have in your notes, and what you know about SI prefixes, see if you can answer example 2 on your own. Okay, so let's see if we got this correct. We start with our given. We have 1 foot. I know if I have feet on the top, I have to have feet on the bottom. And now I'm thinking, well, okay, so I don't know feet to meters. That's not on my list. I know feet to inches, of course. And if you look in your notes, you should also notice that you have inches to centimeters, right? Because 1 inch is exactly 2.54 centimeters. And I know centimeters to meters because that's just one of my SI prefixes. Okay, so watch how I do this. I know that in 1 foot, there's 12 inches. I know in 1 inch, there's 2.54 centimeters. And I also know that 1 centimeter, because centi is 10 to the power negative 2, that is 10 to the power negative 2 meters. Okay, your last step should always be to make sure that your units cancel out correctly. Feet, feet, inches, inches, centimeters, centimeters. Everything is gone except for meters. And now I multiply across the top and the bottom and divide. Okay, and on the bottom, 1 times 1 times 1 would just be 1. Okay, so I'm going to stick this into my calculator. 12 times 2.54 times 10 to the power negative 2. Okay, and I get 0.3. I'm going to round this 305 meters. Okay, really technically speaking, I should probably just leave it at 0.3 meters because of sig figs, but just so you can check to see if your answer is correct, it should be that. Okay, so hopefully that's what you got for example 2. We've now covered what I would consider basic unit conversions. You should now be able to do the first 3 sections on your unit conversion practice assignment. In the next video, we're going to cover what I call more complicated unit conversion problems. Okay, so as always, please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you guys in the next video.